It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. A king, family and nation paying their respects to the fallen in silent reflection on Remembrance Sunday. Nine prime ministers standing in tribute and the veterans remembering the comrades they lost. Also tonight, Israel warns its citizens not to attend sporting events abroad, including in the UK, following the attacks on football fans in Amsterdam. Confirmation that Donald Trump has won his party's biggest election victory in nearly 40 years, as he's reported to have told Vladimir Putin not to escalate the war in Ukraine. Funding a net zero future, the summit that hopes to free trillions in investment despite the re-election of Donald Trump. Riding into history, the tributes the cycling legend Sir Mark Cavendish as he competes in his last race. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. The king and his family led the nation in paying tribute to its war dead on Remembrance Sunday. The monarch laid a wreath as the Princess of Wales watched on from a balcony, both attending their first such event since their diagnoses with cancer. The service at the Cenotaph was mirrored in villages, towns and cities across the UK. Our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, was in Westminster.
In a year of personal challenges, the king led his family to mark the sacrifices of others. On the balcony above, his daughter-in-law, the Princess of Wales, making a rare appearance, here to support her relatives and, importantly, the wider military family. Below, Keir Starmer, leader of the opposition Kemi Badenoch, and 8 former prime ministers were already in place. As Big Ben chimed, this noisy part of London falling silent. People also paused in Belfast, Cardiff, Edinburgh, and at the National Memorial Arboretum.
At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
At the Cenotaph, the king stepped up first to lay his wreath, pausing to pay his respects. An equerry then placing one for the Queen, with Camilla forced to stay at home with a chest infection. But Prince William was there to support his father and salute another generation. Their presence always important for those who still serve.
When I think of remembrance, I think of all those who didn't make it home, but also their families who continue to endure the loss of that loved one. It's a great honour to ever be on parade in front of the royal family, and this will be the first time for me, so it's wonderful.
In a year where there's been some serious doubts over what the princess and the king might be able to do, their appearance has been significant. Not that they were doing it for the sake of them being seen. It was all about drawing the focus onto those who've also committed to a life of service. That sense of a family coming together in tribute could be seen across Whitehall. All ages there to remember their loved ones.
To come here and be together, be surrounded by the military again, see the public that are taking the time out to come and remember is so special. So although, yeah, there are emotions that come back and feelings that come back, you just feel a sense of pride as well.
I'm so proud of him. It's really weird to try and describe how your dad was from I was 11. So from what I remember, he loved what he did and he was so proud of what he did. So I'm proud of him.
Through applause, the crowds shared their appreciation for the 10,000 veterans together for this moment. On a day when the royals were also reunited, their personal struggles insignificant to them as they reaffirmed their commitment to the armed forces. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News in central London.
Israel has told its citizens abroad, including in the UK, to avoid cultural and sporting events over the next week. The Prime Minister's office said that it had intelligence that pro-Palestinian groups intended to harm Israelis attending such events. Well, our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle is in Jerusalem tonight. Alistair, this is a very stark warning from the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Do we know any more about the intelligence that they're referring to?
No, we don't, and there's been no further comment from the security agencies here, and we have asked the Home Office in the UK if they have any more details. They haven't provided any if they do, but we know that there is a big high-profile football game going on later next week between France and Israel, so that will be the subject of a lot of scrutiny and heightened security, given the events that happened in Amsterdam just a few days ago, when both sides clashed. There was Israeli supporters, we believe, who had ripped down a Palestinian flag ahead of a match between Maccabi Tel Aviv and Ajax, and then following the match, many of the Israeli supporters were attacked, chased through the streets of Amsterdam. Some of them ended up in hospital in a very serious instance. So there's a lot of concern that there might be a repeat of that. The fact that this warning has come from the Israeli Prime Minister's office carries considerable weight to it, and they have cited a number of European countries, including Britain and France. But the Israeli Prime Minister's office haven't elaborated on what their intelligence is. As I say, neither have the security services here, nor have any of the European agencies or the governments who have been singled out as a potential flashpoint for trouble for Israelis in those countries.
Alistair Bunkle with the latest there from Jerusalem. Alistair, thank you. Now, Donald Trump may have been out of sight since his U.S. election victory, but it's increasingly clear that he's been busy preparing for his new administration. It's being reported tonight that he has spoken to President Putin and urged him not to escalate the war in Ukraine. Well, the scale of Donald Trump's win is now confirmed after Arizona became the last state to be called. His win there means that he won all 7 battleground states, and with 312 electoral college votes to Kamala Harris's 226, he won the Republicans' biggest victory since George H.W. Bush back in 1988. Well, President-elect Trump will leave Florida for Washington in the coming days to meet President Biden. Sky's David Blevins reports from his base in Mar-a-Lago.
I'm so happy that that man is going to change things.
It's so exciting. I'm proud to be an American.
All eyes are on Mar-a-Lago, the spiritual home of the president in waiting, his followers congregating on a Sunday morning.
Why am I here? We're here every Sunday. This is a church in Mar-a-Lago.
You worship Donald Trump?
No, we don't worship Donald Trump. Let's get that straight. He's God's God. We don't worship Donald Trump, but yes, we support our president.
We're a long way from Washington, but this is where the power rests right now. It's the conversations taking place over there at Mar-a-Lago that will shape America for the next 4 years. We know more about who's out than who's in. Donald Trump posting on his own social media platform that he wouldn't be inviting former Ambassador Nikki Haley or former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to join the administration. He's kept a low profile since his victory speech, with the Democrats in meltdown. The fallout from their defeat is filling the airwaves instead.
If you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mats, taking on powerful special interest and fighting for you? I think the overwhelming answer is no, and that is what has got to change.
He'll be hitting the road to Washington this week for an Oval Office meeting with President Biden, the start of the official transition.
President Biden is committed to the peaceful transfer of power and to a responsible handoff from one president to the next. And then they will go through the top issues, both domestic and foreign policy issues, including what is happening in Europe and Asia and the Middle East.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's spoken to the president-elect 3 times. There's a lot in the in-tray, both at home and abroad. And with Arizona in his grasp, the swing states have rolled over one by one. The road to the White House, now paved in a deep shade of red.
Well, let's speak to David in Florida tonight. David, we may not be seeing Donald Trump, but he has been busy, including, it's being reported tonight, having a conversation with President Putin. What else do we know about that?
Yes, the Washington Post is reporting that Ukraine knew about this call in advance and did not object to it, that Donald Trump urged Vladimir Putin not to escalate the war in Ukraine and expressed his hope for a negotiated settlement. Now, that's something he talked about a lot during the election campaign and something that has raised eyebrows in the international community, which fears any kind of compromise on Ukraine would simply strengthen Putin's hand. But I think what's extraordinary is that these conversations with people like Vladimir Putin and Benjamin Netanyahu are taking place without the support of the State Department and without the support of the US government, which begs the obvious question, who exactly is running America right now? There's also been a steady stream of senior Republicans to Mar-a-Lago this weekend, one by one making the pilgrimage south in the hope of securing a role in the next West Wing. But I suppose if the past week has taught us anything, it's that you can't write the script when it comes to US politics. 2 years ago, the FBI was raiding Mar-a-Lago, hoping to find classified documents which had been removed from the White House. Tonight, the man who's holed up here with his advisors is about to take possession of those classified documents again.
David Blevins with the latest there from Florida. David, thank you. Well, as Donald Trump prepares for his return to the White House, government officials here are preparing for what he might do there. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, told us today they are considering all scenarios in response to fears about the potential impact should the president-elect introduce import tariffs. Our political correspondent, Liz Bates, reports.
So much has changed since Donald Trump's 2019 visit to Downing Street, including the Prime Minister. But the new government will face the same old challenges as they navigate one of the world's most powerful and unpredictable politicians. Top of the agenda, how to protect trade amid the threat of tariffs.
Of course, officials will be considering lots of different scenarios, but the position of the government is that we support free trade and we support the trading relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. It's a very strong, very fruitful relationship, both for us, but also for the American economy. And of course, we want to protect that and strengthen it in the years ahead.
Defence spending is also in the spotlight, with US funding for Ukraine now under threat. Pressure is building on the Prime Minister to say when his target of 2.5% of GDP will be met.
These are political choices that this government have chosen to make. We understand they've got a strategic defence review taking place, and that's right and proper, but they may not even seek to reach that level until 2034. I think we need a stronger West right now, and it's imperative that the West in particular unites around defence spending.
This is a very tricky moment for this Labour government because the last time Donald Trump was in office, they were in opposition and they were very critical, calling him everything from a sexist predator to a sociopath. Now they're rapidly trying to repair the damage and to build bridges because so much rides on that relationship, including the future of the UK economy. The Labour government will likely lean on the royals to smooth the transatlantic relationship, an institution that has long charmed Donald Trump. It may even lay the groundwork for that elusive trade deal, something Theresa May made some progress on, enduring some awkward moments along the way.
We want to trade with the UK, and the UK wants to trade with us.
That was then, but does it still apply now US voters have been promised a new era of protectionism?
The next president has a very warm feeling towards the UK. It's not the ultimate target for these tariffs, and there will be an opportunity for the UK to re-enter trade negotiations as they did 4 years ago.
We've been here before, but a Trump presidency is always unpredictable. And with 2 months until he takes power, the UK, along with the rest of the world, will be waiting to see where it takes us. Liz Bates, Sky News, Westminster.
It's not the most auspicious start to the latest World Climate Summit. The re-election of a US president who calls oil liquid gold and has promised to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. But the lead negotiator of the host country of COP29, that's Azerbaijan, has told Sky News he is optimistic about what can be achieved. The meeting is trying to resolve how to finance the trillions of pounds worth of projects needed to deliver a greener future. From Baku in Azerbaijan, our science and technology editor Tom Clark reports.
Before they even start, clouds loom over the climate negotiations in Baku. America's next president is promising to pull out of the process. Key EU leaders have cancelled attendance, dealing with the political crisis at home. For a negotiation already lagging well behind the pace of our changing climate, is it a fatal blow? Not so, says the man running it.
This year, we had more than 60 countries, elections in more than 60 countries. More than 4 billion people voted. There have been a lot of change, including within the European Union, within other countries. The political landscape has changed, but it has not affected the negotiation process.
If he's right, central to the talks is a deal on climate finance. And host country Azerbaijan is an example of why. Oil and gas beneath Baku and the Caspian Sea beyond make up 90% of its export revenue. The summit wants to see money from countries who've already grown rich by burning fossil fuels to pay for others to transition away from them. Like this. The Garadar solar farm, 15 miles south of Baku, is a vision of a clean energy future for even an oil-rich state like this. Azerbaijan is committed to increase its renewable generation by 30% by 2030. And by quadrupling solar electricity production by building far more big solar farms like this one. It's taking big steps in that direction, but it's also taking bigger steps the opposite way, with plans to increase its oil and gas production by 30% within a decade. So is Azerbaijan, like many other countries at these talks, really committed to a greener future? A cynic would point to Baku's cultural centre, built with $250 million of oil wealth, newly fitted out with electric car chargers. Hasty preparation to clean up the city's image ahead of the climate roadshow. Is Azerbaijan guilty of greenwashing?
If you would ask me that question 2 years ago, I would say greenwashing. But now there is an economical rationale behind it. Reducing local consumption, maintaining export capacity.
One of the reasons Azerbaijan is increasing its fossil fuel production is to meet the demands of Europe, desperate since the war in Ukraine for alternatives to Russian supplies. The same Europe pressuring the world at these talks to reduce emissions faster. The kind of contradiction that explains why progress is so slow and success so far from guaranteed. Tom Clark, Sky News, Baku.
Russia and Ukraine have carried out large-scale drone attacks on each other's territories. Ukraine says Russia launched a record 145 drones overnight, 62 of which were shot down. Meanwhile, Russia says it intercepted 70 drones, including 34 over the outskirts of Moscow. At least 23 people, including 7 children, are reported to have been killed in Israeli strikes on a village north of Beirut in Lebanon. Lebanese officials say the strikes come after 53 people were killed in Israeli attacks yesterday. The Home Office says 9 boats carrying 572 people were intercepted crossing the Channel yesterday. The crossings take the number of people arriving in the UK without permission to enter the country to 1,597 in a week. Sir Mark Cavendish is cycling away from the sport he dominated tonight after riding his last race. Perhaps inevitably, he won for the 166th time in the 2-decade career. The man that many believe is the greatest sprint cyclist there ever was said he was so emotional and couldn't have wished for a better send-off. Our correspondent Sadia Chowdhury reports.
This is how fellow cyclists saluted Mark Cavendish. A guard of honour through raised wheels as the British cycling legend made his way to the start line in Singapore. His final race after nearly 2 decades of professional cycling. Crossing the line in the 25-lap Singapore criterium, Cavendish sealed his 166th road victory. But this win comes with a realisation.
I'm quite emotional, actually. I realised in the last 5 laps was the last 15 kilometres of my career.
The win sealing a career that started in 2005. Sir Mark Cavendish, he was knighted last month, is no stranger to titles. He won stages of all 3 Grand Tours, the 2009 Milan-San Remo, 2 years later the world title, and 35 Tour de France individual stage wins. That's more than any other cyclist.
He's ruthless and determined. I mean, you'd say the same of any kind of great sports person, but so focused on his own performance and just getting to the line. And when he was able to kind of get to the finish line and see it, it was inevitable that a lot of the time he won.
Initially set to retire last year, Cavendish postponed the decision after crashing in the Tour de France, a sport not easy to let go of.
Cycling's such a form of freedom. It's a way to meet people, it's a way to be alone with your thoughts. It's a way to be however you want to be.
Cavendish retired with a promise to keep all that going, even when he's no longer on his bike. Sadia Chowdhury, Sky News.
The retirement of a sporting legend. And now, with the rest of the day's sport, over to Sky Sports News and Nick.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Amarin, then. We've all been learning about him this week. Some people will have had a genuine knowledge. The rest of us have been catching up fast. We've read about his formation. We've seen his press conferences. He looks a really engaging guy. I mean, if I was a Manchester United fan, I must say I'd be quite excited.
He plays apparently a high-tempo way of playing. He wants to press up the pitch. That's the key. Can he get Manchester United up the pitch? You know, I asked for the stats this morning, and you know, it was sober reading about sort of, you know, how high Manchester United play up the pitch, because when I was thinking about what Amarim needs to do to change the flow of the club, and I haven't got my glasses on, so unfortunately you're going to have to bear with me. But when I looked at the sort of average start distance of the teams up the pitch, Manchester City, as you'd expect, are number 1, Arsenal number 2, Liverpool are number 3, Tottenham number 4, and Brighton are number 5, and Manchester United are down in 10th. So I think if you want to push your defence up the pitch, which is what I think every team looks to do nowadays, he's got to start with that, because Manchester United quite often have to go 70, 80 yards to score a goal because they're so deep, and they play like the underdog in games. And then the other one was basically possession 1 in the final third. So possession 1, high up the pitch, where you can really get in and about it. Number 1, Manchester City. Number 2, Tottenham. Number 3, Arsenal. Number 4, Liverpool. Number 8, 9, or whatever. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 9th, Manchester United. So again, as for these stats, you know it's right, but you're trying to think, what does he need to do to alter performance levels? He needs to change these 2 things. And the final one I asked for was basically the highest turnovers. And again, number 1, City. Number 2, Tottenham. Number 3, Liverpool. Number 4, Arsenal. Number 9, Manchester United. So all the things that a modern team do, and the very best teams in the league, and the teams that win the league and are in for winning the league, these 3 things are critical to performance levels. Now, obviously, there are hundreds of other things like set pieces and combinations of play and all that sort of stuff that comes into it. But those 3 things I've watched Manchester United over the last sort of 4, 5, 6, 7 years, they have played like the underdog. They've played like a team that basically, you know, is the one that sat behind the ball. Let's try and get them on the counter or score from a set piece. That's got to change. You've got to be a team of dominance. And I mean dominance, I mean dominating the ball in the final third, dominating your forwards and staying high up the pitch. You can play counter-attack from a deep position in certain parts of matches when you're under pressure, but you can't do it continuously, and you can't be 9th and 10th best in the league in those metrics, because the best teams in the league are in the top 4. in all those metrics. So that's what he's got to bring to the club before you even get to the types of thinking around winning a league. There are some really simple performance metrics that need to be met, and they're really important ones. And let's see what happens. I'm excited by him. I'm excited by the fact that he's fresh. He comes in untainted by the league or by anything else. He can come in and bring a personality. That's the one thing that I've seen this week in his interviews that he's done. I think he's handled the media over in Sporting in Lisbon very well, because he's been in a difficult position, hasn't he? Sort of balancing the loyalty to a club that he's been so good for versus his ambition to move to another club. And I think he's found that right balance. But he's, got a nice way about him in the press conferences. He's got a smile in the press conferences. And, you remember when you're a Manchester United manager, you are the guy that's out front. You're the one that's taking all the questions. Pre-match, post-match, it's you. Nobody else is taking the questions on a continuous basis. You're in that statesman-like position. And
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Finally, the music industry remembered One Direction singer Liam Payne tonight as stars gathered for the MTV Europe Music Awards. Well, our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer is in Manchester for us tonight. Katie.
Look, this has been a strange night in Manchester, if you like. While by and large it has been a joyous celebration of some of the best pop music that we've heard over the last year, I think there has, given the events of the last few weeks, been an expectation, really, that they would want to reflect the life of a star who came here on numerous occasions and won countless awards through One Direction. Most of the night, it was a joyous celebration of music. Brilliant performances from the likes of Busta Rhymes, who received the Icon Award. But towards the very end of the ceremony, within the last few minutes here in Manchester, Rita Ora, the host, paid tribute to Liam Payne. She duetted with the star when he embarked on his solo career. It's been a hugely emotional few weeks for her, and her voice cracked when she paid tribute to Liam. She made an effort to stress that it had been an incredibly hard few weeks, and that he was the kindest person that she knew. A big part of the music world that she stressed, and how he was really the first person to offer words of support and offer any help he could to his fellow contemporaries within the music industry, that he'd brought so much joy to the world of music, and he left such a mark on the industry itself. And then they played a short excerpt of one of Liam Payne's songs. I have to say, when you looked around the audience tonight, there were a lot of tears. Rita Ora herself looked close to tears, and I think really it has been a very sort of strange moment within the music industry, with people wanting to reflect exactly what's happened. Certainly on the red carpet, when we were talking to stars a little earlier as well, we were talking to Mabel and her mother, Nana Cherry, two big artists within the music industry, and they were talking about how there really is this moment of self-reflection really within the industry, as people sort of re-examine the pressures that a lot of these stars are under. And we had a performance tonight from Ray as well, who was singing one of her songs about body dysmorphia, and it really kind of, I think tonight is a night that's brought home really the pressures of fame. While it is a glamorous and glitzy life that a lot of people may aspire to, it also comes with a weight of expectation and can be a lot for a lot of these young stars to process. So an emotional evening with a lot of people wanting to reflect on the death of Liam Payne.
Katie Spencer at the MTV Europe Music Awards. Katie, thank you. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by political and PR consultant Leon Emirali and barrister and former Conservative Minister Anna Soubry. Well, among the stories, we'll be discussing this on the front of the Telegraph. The headline, Starmer plots to thwart Trump on Ukraine. We'll be right back.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest 'Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out. The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty? I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. The King and members of the royal family have led the nation in paying tribute to its war dead on Remembrance Sunday. Israel has told its citizens not to attend cultural or sports events in countries including the UK, saying it has intelligence that pro-Palestinian groups intend to harm Israelis. Donald Trump has completed a clean sweep of the swing states in the U.S. election, winning in Arizona, the last state to be called. Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with political and PR consultant Leon Emirali and the barrister and former Conservative Minister Anna Soubry. Welcome both. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, the Metro reports on the Princess of Wales paying tribute to the nation's war dead on her biggest day back to royal duties after receiving cancer treatment. The Telegraph says Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron are planning a last-minute effort to try to stop Donald Trump reducing U.S. support for Ukraine. The Guardian adds that the two leaders are meeting in Paris for France's Armistice Day service as a show of European solidarity after Trump's re-election. The Daily Mail says Labour is facing a backlash tonight after a minister admitted a vital military boost might not be delivered within 5 years. The Eye says some Home Office civil servants believe that Labour's plans to tackle small boats will have little impact on channel crossings and illegal immigration. The Financial Times reports that the world's largest cryptocurrency, that's Bitcoin, has hit a new all-time high of more than $80,000 after traders bet on Donald Trump winning the US election. And the Star reports on British actor Damian Lewis likening Donald Trump to King Henry VIII. Don't tell Melania. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And as I mentioned, we're joined tonight by Leon Emirali and Anna Subri. Welcome both. Thank you for being with us. Let's start with the Daily Telegraph and a story that I was mentioning there. So front page of the Telegraph, Starmer plots to thwart Trump on Ukraine. Now, we all know that Donald Trump said he could end the war in a day. We have just found out in the past hour or so that actually he had a call with Vladimir Putin asking him to not escalate the war. So, Anna, talk us through this development and where you think we stand with Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to ignore the headline because I think it's unfortunate. It sounds like it's a criticism, which I don't think it is. But what this is all about is that tomorrow, Keir Starmer will become the first UK leader to go to France to join their commemorations for Armistice Day. So that in itself is quite historic. But it's obviously a great opportunity for him to talk to Starmer, and to talk to Macron. And according to the Telegraph, those talks are going to include about how they can persuade Joe Biden, particularly to use a certain type of missile to go into Russia, so that the Americans will allow that to happen, because even Biden has held back to some extent as to what the allies, if you like, can do.
And specifically, it's the Storm Shadow missiles deep into Russia.
Yes. And so obviously the idea is because Trump has, I mean, his big pal is Putin, so it doesn't sound as if he's going to be particularly sympathetic to the Ukrainian people in their struggles to get rid of this invader. And so what they're trying to do is not just put the money in place, which is apparently what Biden wants to do, but actually look at the military side of it as well. The Telegraph calls it thwarts Trump on Ukraine. Actually, I think it's much better to say actually to support Ukraine in trying to become that, retain its sovereignty and independence.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting tactic by Starmer and by the EU leaders, because Donald Trump is famously thin-skinned, and could this be seen as going behind his back, undermining his foreign policy, when perhaps actually Starmer and co should be speaking directly to the transitional team and saying to Trump, listen, you know, let's take a different approach to this if we can, because I think Donald Trump might be looking at this and thinking, well, hang on a minute, the EU are sort of doing something in counter to what I've suggested I'll do as president. So it's an interesting tactic. Obviously, there needs to be a resolution on Ukraine, and there is a clear split between what Donald Trump wants to do, what's in his interests, and what is in the EU's and the UK's interests.
Well, I don't think it's EU, actually, this is, at the moment, this is Starmer and Macron. Basically. So it is two influential, important leaders in Europe.
And going to that point, let's look at The Guardian, the front page there, which speaks to exactly what you were just mentioning there, Anna. The headline, Starmer at French Armistice Day in show of European solidarity. Because since the election of Donald Trump, a lot of people have been asking themselves the question, what happens to the Western alliance? Call it NATO, call it what you will, but is there going to be a split? And what is the European, not EU, but sort of more continental, as in including the UK, response? So what do you make, Leon, of this? Starmer, in effect, showing European solidarity by standing side to side with Macron?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing, and we're a far cry away from a former Prime Minister who was questioning whether France were a friend or a foe. Right. I mean, you know, it's good that we are on those terms now with our European neighbours. So I think that is a good thing. Starmer's got a real problem, and it's Donald Trump-shaped, unfortunately, for him, because there is an opportunity to cosy up to the new president, potentially take advantage of some economic trade arrangement that might be in place for Britain, or does he stick close to the European allies? Both have their pros, both have their cons, and I think that is something Number 10 have to figure out. Certainly on defence, let's leave the economy for one side, certainly on defence, it looks as though Starmer is siding with the European allies, and in my opinion, that's the right thing to do. I think he does have to be careful, because there could be an opportunity for a closer relationship with the US under Trump. But, you know, Starmer now has to represent a good Prime Minister, being able to straddle both of those camps.
And you think about it, I mean, today, and of course tomorrow as well, when it's actually the 11th day of the 11th month and so on, and when we remember all those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. But we often really concentrate on the Second World War because so few of those veterans are still alive, sadly, for obvious reasons. But, you know, what saved our freedom was working with not just our colleagues in the rest of Europe, but it was the Americans. I mean, without the Americans, arguably, we wouldn't have won the Second World War. And obviously the Canadians and those... But, you know, America stood shoulder to shoulder with us, with the rest of Europe, in defeating fascism and Nazism. And it's kind of like, you know, you wish that Trump would remember his history and the fantastic role that America played then, and it should be playing that role, continuing to play that role in seeing off Putin and his danger to our freedoms.
One of Trump's main criticism towards the rest of NATO is that they don't pay up as they should. And, you know, he does have a point, which leads us neatly to the Daily Mail, sort of. So front page there, the headline, when will Labour give forces funds they need? So here is that we're hearing that Labour faced an angry backlash after a minister admitted a vital boost to the military may not be delivered within 5 years. Because, you know, we can talk about alliances, but ultimately it's about putting money in defence, Leon.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And my take from the general election campaign here was that Labour were going to commit to this 2.5%. Donald Trump's actually asking for 3% now, so we need to go above and beyond just 2.5%. But we are, as a country, it is imperative that we do spend a good amount, the right amount on defence. We are living in a more dangerous world than ever before. And I think that for this government, they have to go in, they want to fix the foundations. That's Labour's slogan. The best way to fix the foundations is to get our military in shape to ensure that we are a safe country. And I think they have to come up with an answer on this pretty soon.
But I mean, I was a defence minister when I was in government. It was one of the most rewarding jobs that I ever did, actually. I enjoyed it enormously. And it was a great honour to do it.
Why? Why specifically?
Oh, to work with our armed forces. And the calibre is extraordinary. And the civil servants. I mean, the MOD is just the most extraordinary group of people to work with. And I think that, as I say, the quality of the people, of whatever rank, was something I'll never forget. And we did do some good work. But we had that problem when I was, you know, a Conservative minister serving in Conservative governments, where we didn't give our armed forces, our defence budget was not being given the money that many of us wanted it to be given. And that has continued. So it's really rich of, you know, Conservative members of Parliament, including Priti Patel talking to Trevor, as she did do this morning, criticising Labour for this, when actually the Conservatives failed to invest in our armed forces in the way that they should have done to make us fit. And remember that moment when Boris Johnson said, "Oh, we don't need tanks." Do you remember that exchange with Tobias Ellwood when he was a defence minister and Johnson dismissed all of this? And what have we seen with the invasion by the Russians of Ukraine was the use of tanks. So it's complicated. There are no simple solutions, but at the end of the day, it's about dosh. It's about money.
OK, well, it'll be particularly difficult for them right now when we all know the fallout of the budget has been a lot of unhappy businesses and farmers, but difficult decisions for the government. Let's go to the Metro now. And very poignant picture, well, two pictures there of Princess Kate and the King and the words there, solemn duty. Anna, I mean, you know, the ceremony, Remembrance Sunday, is always touching, maybe particularly touching this year because you saw both the King and Princess Kate, you know, when we know they've had a very difficult year with cancer, both of them.
Yes, and to see her out when, you know, she doesn't have to do this. She could have stayed at home. But I think she's absolutely driven by her public duty. We know the Queen wanted to be there, but she couldn't be there because her doctors told her that she was not going to attend because she's poorly. With this chest infection. But it is poignant. But, you know, for the royal family, and again, it kind of touched on what we were talking before about this, you know, my experiences working with the armed forces, this profound sense of duty, because they understand that the huge sacrifices that people make, not just those who actually serve and put themselves on the front line, and they suffer terrible injuries and, of course, the ultimate sacrifice, the loss of life, but also the families as well. It's a huge part of this act of remembrance because they also make sacrifices. They actually also serve. And I think the royal family, it just touches them. And I think it's probably because of that profound sense of duty that they feel to our nation And so they recognise the service of all of those.
And it's a poignant and timely reminder, I think, of the horrors of war. You know, we're thinking of these young, largely men, who lost their lives, and we're seeing that happen, not in this country, thankfully, but around the world. We are in a very dangerous geopolitical moment, and I think it was a timely reminder of the horrors of war, and the royal family do a fantastic job of leading those commemorations.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously, apart from very few veterans, no one really remembers World War II anymore. We have known peace for decades and decades.
Yeah, it was interesting. I watched the festival last night from the Albert Hall, and they had three people. They had somebody from the Commonwealth, who I think was her father, anyway, a member of her family who had served. And then there was a woman, one of the last survivors from World War II, who had served in the RAF. And then there was a little boy who talked about his father and said, we must never forget and we must understand as children. And I thought that was just hugely powerful and poignant, because we mustn't let people forget what this is all about, why it's so important that we remember that sacrifice. And also the horrors of war.
Yeah. And what it took to achieve peace. Liam and Anna, thank you both so much. Coming up, we'll talk about why Labour's plans to tackle criminal gangs might not have much impact on Channel crossings.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Sky News, get the full story first. Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor? President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media. Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Were you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Free, wherever you get your news.
Excited.
I've had severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live. I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
This conflict. They keep telling us that they want aid. And this is what's left of it.
Heavy vehicle.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you
to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me in the studio, political and PR consultant Leon Emirali and barrister and former Conservative Minister Anna Soubry. OK, let's go straight to the front page of The Eye. A story here on migration. The headline, Smash the Gangs Won't Work. Now, of course, Smash the Gangs has been the Prime Minister's mantra over migration. And just last week, he announced a further £75 million for the Border Security Command. He says that illegal migration should be treated like terrorism. But now we're hearing in the story that nobody, quote, understands how the new Border Security Command will work. Anna.
Yes, I mean, there's not much detail in this story in The Eye, but it's a headline.
And it's insiders, so it's
exactly. But it's a headline and it's bullet points that this government will not want to hear going into next week, of course. I think the point they're forgetting is that what Starmer's doing is he's relying on his experience as a former director of public prosecutions to say, if you look at the way that we deal with terrorism, which is intelligence-led, which is working internationally, you can actually begin to make big inroads into this. It's a huge task for him. It's a huge target, if you like, that they've set by saying, we are going to smash the gangs. So he's got to make it work. So I have hope in him because of his past and his abilities that actually could deliver it, because we've got to do something about it, and it makes sense to me to do it internationally and do it in that more that cleverer way than just seeing it as simple criminality, but looking at it with all the skills that you need as if it's...
Because it's both trafficking, but the truth is there is also a massive demand for it as well.
Massively. And I think, you know, Anna's absolutely right on the international component of this. That's the only way this can be stopped. But politically, smash the gangs isn't very different to stop the boats. No, and Rishi Sunak said, judge me on it, judge me on it. And Keir Starmer's saying the same thing. And, you know, if we judge him in the way we judge Rishi Sunak on it, then it's not good news for his political fortune. So I do think this is such a tough policy area to get right. And, you know, governments have been trying for years to get this right, and they haven't been able to. And I do just think that there needs to be creative, fresh thinking on this issue. Otherwise, it's just going to create a rod for their own backs again.
You see, because even if you put in, which we should do, safe routes for people who are escaping war zones, the horrors of war and all the attendant features of it, that actually won't smash the gangs and solve the problem.
There'll still be demand.
Well, it's also that you've got people, you know, there are some people who get on those boats who've actually taken a journey that's taken them years to get to Calais or wherever it is they get the boat. So it's almost like, to use that word, which we're familiar with in the criminal justice system, there's this huge backlog. So even if you did put the safe routes in, which we should do in my view, it won't solve the fact that there are still these numbers coming in different routes that have taken years to do it. So it's a big problem. But
it is. And an international one, like you said. I mean, no single country can look at it individually. Let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Telegraph. You know, a lot of criticism from the budget, one of the worst ones about the national insurance increases for employers. Here, pubs and restaurants told to suck it up over national insurance increases. Leon.
Yeah, I mean, this is the story that the Chief Secretary of Treasury, Darren Jones, Rachel Reeves' number 2, has come out and said, look, businesses, they might complain about national insurance increases, but get on with it. I don't think that's smart, because this is a real impact on small businesses, big businesses. It's going to take a chunk off of their bottom lines. And it's not just pubs and restaurants. Supermarkets, we heard Tesco say this is going to cost them £1 billion.
Hospitality as well.
Over a 5-year period. And hospitality. And there's lots of small businesses in those sectors. And I do think Labour need to come up with something that's slightly more, shall we say, pleasant to businesses that express concerns here, because it's not good enough to just say, get on with it, get on with the job. We expect the government to be on the side of business to come up with a solution. I
mean, they will say, obviously, that they had very difficult decisions to make, and this is how they help working people, to go back to that debate. What have you made of it?
Well, you see, it's so difficult, this, because when you say you're not going to put up taxes and you're not going to put up NI on individuals and VAT, then how are you going to raise the money that we desperately need to raise, not just to fill the black hole, but actually to invest in infrastructure and put the money into our public services, which are largely on their knees? My response is, OK, so where does this money come from? But it is a big gamble, because if you want growth, then that growth comes from businesses and from investment in infrastructure. And so it is a gamble that Labour have, that by making this hit of extra money coming in, which we need in the way that I described to do, you don't depress businesses so that they are going to have to make redundancies or pass on the costs to the customers.
And these are businesses with small margins. You know,
Yeah,
we look at hospitality, we look at pubs and restaurants, tiny, tiny margins.
Yes.
Things like NI, a big NI hit, could put businesses out of business entirely. So
it doesn't
really
sound
sensitive.
that it was right to be very cautious about this. It is 13.5% to 15%, but with very, very tight margins. And some still not recovering from COVID, of course. I mean, right on the edge of going under. It will have an impact.
Going to have to leave it there for the moment. Leona Mirali, Anna Subri, thank you both so much. And coming up next on Sky News at 11. The nation's war dead have been commemorated by the King as tributes are paid around the UK.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.